Hi, I'm Lizzie Billington and I'm a PhD student at the Pirbright Institute. So I study bird flu viruses, and in particular I look at how one of the proteins that the viruses make can interact with the bird immune systems to try and make the bird pretend like it's not infected with a virus. And this basically means that the virus can go about its day and infect the bird more because the immune system isn't functioning. So at the moment I'm actually writing up my thesis, so my day-to-day is typing away at my computer, trying to analyse all my data and find references to support the arguments I want to make. But normally I'd be in the lab for most of the day, so you don't necessarily have a sort of average day as a PhD student, but you might have sort of an average week, because most people tend to get into a rhythm of, oh, if I prepare some cells on this day, then I'll treat them with whatever I'm treating them with. Maybe it's a chemical, maybe you're infecting them, maybe you want them to produce some protein for you. And that means I'll have to collect my samples on this day, and then I'll be analysing them. So it's one of the nice things about being a PhD student is that you do get to have some variety in your day. I did an integrated master's degree at the University of Sheffield, and I chose an integrated master's because it meant that my master's degree counted as part of my first degree, so the student loans company would pay, and that meant I didn't have to find £10,000 I don't have. So while I was at Sheffield, I was really lucky and had the opportunity to do some research placements. So I spent a summer working in a lab in the dental school, and then my master's year featured a 6-month-long research placement in the medical school. And at the end of this, I decided that one of the things I'd really enjoyed during my undergraduate degree was the research experience, because it was the first taste I'd had of like real life research, where there was nobody standing at the end of the bench with all the answers in a handy red folder. So I decided that seeing as research was what I really enjoyed, and a lot of people I'd spoken to had said that in order to get ahead in something like a pharmaceutical company, a PhD would be really useful. I decided I would apply for some PhDs. So I applied for this PhD and managed to get it. So my PhD is a little bit different because when you do a PhD, you have to acquire funding for it. And my PhD is split funded between the University of Edinburgh through the EastBio DTP and the Pirbright Institute. So because they were putting half the money in order to make sure everyone got kind of fair usage of me as a student, I actually spent the first 15 months or so of my project working at the University of Edinburgh in the Roslin Institute. And then I moved down to the Pirbright Institute, which was interesting because I kind of had to sort of wrap up as much research as I could in Edinburgh and then ship a bunch of stuff down to Surrey and then move myself down to Surrey and then turn up at Pirbright Institute and had to learn where everything was in the lab again, and some of the protocols we use for experiments are a little bit different down here. But I do think it was a really interesting experience to have, and it'll probably be really useful like when I leave here and go to have a job, because I'll already be used to how to switch labs. So I think what really appealed to me about doing a PhD was that I'd really enjoyed the research experience I've been able to have as an undergraduate, and I wasn't super enthused by going straight into the job market with my master's degree. I thought that actually I quite liked being a student, and if a PhD might be useful to me further along the road, then I may as well get one now while I was still in student mindset. The Institute's actually been pretty good about dealing with things, so I'm quite lucky. My supervisor's been lovely and really supportive throughout the whole pandemic issue. She's been very good at keeping me sane. One of the sort of student welfare people down here, Yvonne, has also been absolutely lovely. So at Pirbright, we are a little bit isolated, but because we're a little bit isolated, everyone kind of really bands together and tries to be really sociable. So we get things like subsidised student socials, where we've done things like go to mini golf or go go-karting, which has been really cool. We're also kind of quite self-motivated with that sort of stuff. So we have like different Facebook groups for different sports that people like to do. So whether that's badminton, swimming, climbing, everyone really does sort of make the effort to be sociable. So one of the best opportunities I've had while working at the Institute was the opportunity to get some microscopy training. So this has been working with these really expensive machines called confocal microscopes that use like different lasers to light up different parts of the cell and help you get clearer pictures. And this is going to be a really good transferable skill for me going forward, is to be able to put on my CV that yes, I know how a confocal microscope works and I've been able to use this in my PhD. One of my favourite things about being a scientist is that you get to know stuff first. So you've planned your experiments, you've done it, you've analysed your data, and for that half hour, maybe a week before you have your supervisor meeting, you're the only one on the planet who knows that data. You're the only one who knows what your specific virus does in that specific situation, which I think is really cool and I just like to have. I also really enjoy going to conferences. So conferences are like big scientific meetings where you present the work that you've been working on and other scientists can give you feedback on this and maybe suggest further experiments that you could do, or maybe they'll want to collaborate because they're doing something similar. So as a scientist, what I would like to achieve is just to increase the total of knowledge. So I'm really interested in the basic stuff of how viruses work, which is really important because you need to have this basic knowledge and understanding of how the viruses work so that like 10, 20 years down the line, however long that is, someone else can come along and do the applied things, like maybe it's a drug target, maybe it's a new form of immunotherapy, but you've got to have the building blocks in order to be able to get to that level. I'd say go for it. Like, it's been a really fulfilling experience for me. It hasn't always been easy, but PhDs aren't necessarily meant to be a smooth ride. They're meant to challenge you so that you can grow and so you can learn where your limits are and who you are as a person. I would also say make sure you get yourself a support network. So whether that's people who don't have anything to do with science or whether that's you clubbing together with your fellow students, find someone who's gonna be there for you when it's like 7 o'clock on a Friday night, your Western lots just failed, the world is crumbling. Find someone who will be there to pick you up and say, hey, it's gonna be okay. So hopefully this has been useful to anyone who's thinking about doing a PhD, and hopefully it's encouraged you to think about science as being not just a career, but a really fun and rewarding career.